Thank you. Good afternoon, folks. My name is Mozam. My first order of business today here will be to introduce these five exceptional personalities. Although they need no introduction, I'll still proceed to do just that, primarily for the reason that that camera person standing over there can capture me for a couple of minutes, and I'll probably later boast about it on social media, so please. The first person that I'll introduce is Honorable Miss Justice Gita Mittal. She enrolled as an advocate in 1981, was appointed as an additional judge of the Honorable Delhi High Court in the July of 2004, confirmed as a permanent judge less than 2 years later. And she was also, she then rose up and was finally appointed as the acting Chief Justice of the Honorable Delhi High Court on the 14th of April 2017. And after spending about 12 odd years in the Delhi High Court, she became the first woman Chief Justice of the Honorable Jammu and Kashmir High Court, which is the High Court of my state, and finally retired in 2020. Post-retirement, she was appointed as a chairperson of Broadcasting Contents Complaints Council and was appointed as the chairman of Committee of Administrators of Table Tennis Federation of India. Welcome, ma'am. Next, we have Ms. Priya Puri, Advocate on Record, Supreme Court of India. She has a wide variety of experience handling matters of constitutional law, arbitration law, corporate laws, and experience spanning a decade, about 2.5 decades. In cases of note that she's been involved in, I'll just name a couple. Supriya Chakrabarti and another versus Union of India. This was a case in which the wires of the Special Marriage Act 1954 were being challenged as being discriminatory against same-sex couples. Another case that she was involved in, Haji Ali Dargah Trust versus Noor Jahan. This was a case in which the Dargah Trust finally agreed to give entry in the sanctum sanctorum to women at par with men. Next we have Ms. Pinky Anand, Senior Advocate. She is the former Additional Solicitor General of India at the Supreme Court of India, and I believe she held that position for 6 years, from 2014 to 2020. 24 hours a day. She was also the head of All India Legal Cell at Bharatiya Janata Party. I'm assuming that there was an overlap. She found the 25th hour in there. She has been a recipient of numerous awards. The one that I'm curious about, and the only one that I'll be naming, is the French National Order of Merit received from the President of French Republic. And perhaps, ma'am, during or after your session, perhaps you'll just illuminate us on what exactly did you have to do to get that particular piece of jewelry?
Later in the evening.
Later in the evening, fantastic. Next we have Ms. Shyel Trehan. She is a graduate of NLSIU Bangalore and later on Columbia Law School. She spent 4 years with ACE law firms in the US, such as Mayer Brown, their Chicago office, Fried Frank, their New York office, before moving to India finally and setting up chambers of Shyel Trehan. Shyel, welcome. And then we have Ms. Neelima Tripathi, Senior Advocate. She is a graduate in Economic Honors from SRCC, qualified Chartered Accountant, and I believe practiced for a couple of years as well as a Chartered Accountant. Has 3 decades of experience in a wide array of practice areas, including constitutional law, civil law, commercial litigation, and arbitration. She is a celebrated speaker on social media, on socially relevant issues, perhaps. I don't know whether it's on social media or not. I know definitely it's on AIR. On socially relevant issues like senior citizen rights, women and children welfare, mental health, to name a few. She has also been adjunct professor at Jindal Global Law University. Welcome, ma'am. And I think I'll just ask one question from the podium and then I'll move to the dais. Our theme here is engendering the bar and bench towards a diverse and inclusive future. So you'll note many words in this one sentence. You'll note the word bar, you'll know the word bench, you'll note the word diverse, you'll note the word inclusive. Now when I read the first, this topic for the first time, I don't know whether many of you share it. I did not know that there was actually a difference between diversity and inclusiveness. So ma'am, my first question to Ms. Pinky Anand, could you help us understand the theme a little better? What is diversity? What is inclusion?
So diversity is being invited to a party. Come, join the party. So all you youngsters are there at the party. Inclusion is asking you to dance. I think that kind of puts the perspective, because forever we are talking about diversity as an overall scenario. Now diversity itself is lauded upon, it's commended, it's advocated, we all want to go in that direction. In fact, what I'm very impressed about with ourselves is that we made it a narrative today. And that is the impressive part of it. Whatever becomes a narrative becomes a reality. So whatever starts with diversity will end in inclusion. There is already some modicum of that, but obviously we are hedging in our bets there, and that's why we are here, and that's why we constantly discuss. And I think the focus of youngsters, more so than the seniors, I might say. Seniors lead the way, we show the directions, but at the same time it is you youngsters who are actually advocating for this inclusive part to make it a completely diverse society. So they do run conjunctively. It's not that they are disjunctive totally. But since the nature and manner of the two concepts is different, so the whole narrative really is that, yes, today the general discourse is and the narrative is to have more women, whether across the bar, whether across the judiciary, whether across the bar councils, whether across the country. And in fact, I must share with all of you that I think for the recent past, the two Chief Justices, the current Chief Justice, of course, Justice Chandrachud, and Chief Justice Ramanna, have both been advocating very strongly, and we've had a very, very strong move in that direction. But that is where the whole difference of conversation is. So we have diversity, we are including, we are expanding, we are in numerals, we are increasing, but that's also incidentally a critique of this entire thing. Don't look at numbers alone. Even though all of us take numbers, and I personally use numbers a lot to demonstrate the fact that there has been a rise. Yes, there has been a rise. Global gender reports indicates, yes, it's been a narrowing down. But effectively, how many people do we have at the top? How many people do we have in the middle level? More than even the top sometimes. I feel the middle level is even more important. How many women do we have on the companies? How many women do we have on the boards? How many CEOs do we have? How many CEOs do we have in mid-level firms? How many lawyers do we have in the trial courts? How many women lawyers do we have in the High Court? How many do we have in the Supreme Court? How many senior advocates do you have? In Supreme Court there are 5. In the High Court there are 11. And if you look at the numbers across, incidentally, that will show you and demonstrate the whole point. But that is the whole point, that yes, we have today, all of us, been invited to a party, for sure. That is the narrative today. There's no leaving that behind. But at the same time, we all want to dance. And we do want to partake of the economic and other social success and contribute our assets into this great country and the great global world. And I think that's where we are really heading towards, and that's why possibly, as I said, one-liner kind of puts it to perspective. And another very interesting comment, let it not be a tick box. So diversity as a concept sometimes can remain as a tick box. Inclusion completes that circle and puts color into it, puts color into the theme, substance into the theme, content into the theme.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think nobody could have put this better, this analogy that you've given, being invited to a party and then being asked to dance. Ms. Puri, the next question to you, ma'am. Now, technology is a great enabler, it's a great balancer of things, and one question on this aspect that perhaps you can throw some light on. How do you see the role of technology to bridge this gap towards perhaps a more inclusive and a more diverse future?
Hi. Mozam, I feel that, the pandemic has really helped us as far as digitization of courts is concerned. It brought about certain unique challenges, and the way that the courts and lawyers especially have had to change their method of working is because of the pandemic. Because suddenly digitization, which was there but was being used for in very rare cases, has suddenly become a part of our life. Everybody who was in fact, not even wanting the change has been forced to change. And this has worked as a boon, especially for women lawyers. Because before COVID, if you see, most of the firms or employers were not offering flexible hours or the option of work from home. It was kind of considered that if you're a lawyer, you have to come to court, you have to come to office to work. But this all has changed, and people have realized that it is a different method, way of working if you're working from home. It does not make it less effective. It may be as effective, in fact. In certain cases, more so, because now you have more time. You are not wasting time commuting. Even the clients have kind of understood that it is not necessary to meet the lawyer face to face. Even if they are meeting virtually, it is, as it does help, they are not wasting their time, and there is more of a collaboration. Somebody who's sitting in Delhi and somebody who's sitting in Bombay can all, join together and discuss the matter instead of everybody having to come over. And VC, I think, virtual hearings have been really, has helped the women to have a work-life balance. I will not say it has become better, but it has definitely become easier. So looking at all that, I hope that the VCs continue, because now the courts have started saying that even if there is an option of virtual hearing which has been given, they want you to start coming to court, which I hope will not take us back to pre-COVID times.
I want to add something here. I was just hearing Priya and just wondering whether this digitization is only qua women. Of course, the subject is engenderment, so therefore, obviously, we relate to that. But the recent budget the budget indicated 7,000 crores for digitization, and I think digitization by itself has so much of a move forward. And what I was actually wanting to voice was, and this is across board. I'm not talking about women only, women and young. I'm talking about young lawyers. It's incredible. Young lawyers are actually appearing a lot more online than I believe that it might be possible. So you find that you're developing that expertise. So just one of the days in court, I was arguing a matter and somebody was opposing me and he said, "Ma'am, I'm arguing from the laptop for the first time. Please don't put me down." I said, "No, I promise you, not on this count. You're giving it a shot, so be it." So it actually is lending yourself so much to the improvement of the efficiency. And I think the way the system is, we just can't go backwards. But what Priya said is right. Some of the courts are seeking to reverse back to the age-old times. There is a question about hybrid. Most judges are not liking hybrid. They don't mind full virtual, full physical. But hybrid is something that opposition is being taken to. But recently, again,
between the Chief Justice has been time and again indicating, the face-to-face at some point, some of the judges, and others are indicating that the virtual, the Chief Justice in particular, again, has been voicing the concern for having the digitization process go through, and particularly e-filing. The whole works, it's really translated. You're having translation at this point of time across 8 languages. You're having e-filing become a complete kind of norm. So if you're talking about the legal platform and us as lawyers, I think the world has changed for us. COVID has taught us a lot. Adversity sometimes doesn't bring out adversity alone. It actually brings out the best. And India, incidentally, was one of the best performers in COVID times. If you compared UK, USA, we were the best performers in terms of disposal of matters and taking up matters. And it was actually at a glance they said, let's do virtual and let's get on with it. And we even addressed over telephones, mobiles. In fact, there's another thing. The court has been saying we should also consider using mobiles. We've been recently discouraging it, but let's kind of go back to the system. Why shouldn't we have mobiles actually? Because more people have access to mobiles than to laptops. You do have that divide which you have to fill in somehow.
We are talking of not only digitalization, but the topic is really inclusion. So while we are sitting in Delhi and we are sitting in the Imperial Hotel and we are talking of digitalization, let's remember that digitalization and enforcing this requirement of e-courts is actually excluding a large chunk of population from access to justice. I've been traveling across the country. I navigated COVID when I was in Jammu and Kashmir, and we were navigating e-courts on 2G. We weren't even permitted 4G. And I used to have 13 telephone instruments, a mobile, 2 landlines, my secretary's phone, somebody's, Airtel, somebody's Vodafone, anything which would enable access to people from remote parts of the country. And also, while we're talking of digitalization, we haven't begun the digitalization of records from the trial courts. Courts in Pali, Satna, I just came back from Madhya Pradesh, they don't have electricity. So they talk of what about where will e-courts take? So what I would request is that when you're looking at inclusion and you're looking at digitalization and you're looking at e-courts, you have to go whole hog. You have to begin from the trial courts and first empower the trial courts to be able to digitalize and address the requirements of e-courts. India doesn't begin and end with the high courts. These are the constitutional courts and the Supreme Court. It's wonderful that you have access to the Supreme Court sitting in Ernakulam or some remote village, but you have to ensure that the last villager in the remotest part of northeast of India, in the extreme west of India, in the tribal belt of Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, in the remote corners of Kerala and Tamil Nadu, is able to access the courts in the same manner as we in the metropolitans can do. And this is very, very important that we look at it comprehensively and not begin top down but start bottom up.
May I just also put in my 2 pence bit? Yes, I think I completely agree with what Gita ma'am has just said. Though I would say the trend has been in the positive direction. We have completed phase 1 and phase 2 of the e-courts, developing the e-courts. And we are currently into the phase 3, where a good amount has been set aside in the current union budget. So it's a good thing that the system, the government is aware of the fact that this is the need of the hour. There is a need that everything should be digitized so that there is complete participation across the country. And they have taken this step of putting aside an amount specifically for this purpose, a good amount in the union budget.
So, thank you so much, panelists. So I guess just to sum it up, what Ms. Puri was saying, a change that was in fact forced upon us by, a microscopic organism has in fact led to an unintended but quite a great consequence, which is virtual courts, and a lot has been spent already on it. To perhaps roll it back now would be wasting all of that taxpayer money. But like Justice Mittal was saying, we still have miles to go before that trickle-down effect is actually seen in the probably the courts which come right at the bottom of this entire pyramid. Ms. Trehan, my next question to you on a slightly unrelated topic. I read a very interesting piece written by you in the Hindustan Times. Could you probably draw on your experience during your times in Chicago, in New York, later on in India, and tell us your thoughts on leveling the playing field amongst?
So I think when you're in New York, Chicago, I was a junior associate in a law firm. So it's very easy to create a bubble of inclusion and diversity in these law firms. They were great at it. And same in law firms here also, efforts are made to, keep it very inclusive. But when the person steps out into, especially for litigating lawyers, into the big bad world of the courts or the good world of the courts, it's a very different picture everywhere. So it's not terribly different anywhere. And the statistic kind of, I know Ms. Anand said, don't look at numbers, but I feel in some sense numbers are very telling. So statistics on people who address a court in the US, who just speak in court, less than 25% are women. And then if you look at the sliding scale of the number of women in high value cases, if you take out the government briefs as well, you're looking at less than 5%. If you look at KCs or QCs in the UK, senior counsels, equivalent of senior counsels here, you're looking at the highest number they've ever had is now, which is, I think, still less than 20%. Now, our Supreme Court is at 1%. We have 15, I think, or 16 designated senior counsels who are women. And some high courts have slightly higher, some have actually lower statistics than this as well. So I think one of the things which is across the board is there's inclusion coming in or diversity coming in gender-wise at the intake levels, but as you go higher and higher up the pyramid, judges, senior counsels, it's becoming, it tapers, and the number of women tapers even more. And that's something which I think things have changed. I think it'll be different for generations going forward, and the changes now will be seen only 10 years from now and 15 years from now. And I hope we get to see that. So that's one thing that, I mean, it's across the board, but India's statistics are particularly bad compared to others, but the others are not great either. And in law firms versus the litigating bar, there's also a difference. So I think that's something we do need to look at. And I feel the only way to actually level the playing field is to level the playing field at home, which is that men need to step up and take a far larger role in the domestic burden. Women can have it all, but that means today women are doing it all as well. Men need to be brought into this conversation. I mean, look at this panel. There's only a token male Mozam, both on religion and gender, and we're in echo chambers. I'm glad to see lots of men here, though, in the audience, because, I mean, this is not about women talking to women about women's problems. And the minute we're in an echo chamber, until men are in this conversation, nothing's going to change, I feel. So, and, when women have talks with other women in various female lawyer forums, one of the things is, people are told how to dress and come to work on time and things like that. But stories people aren't hearing, like one of the hardest working judges today is Justice Manmeet Arora in the Delhi High Court. Her husband does the lion's share. He has a flourishing career of his own, but he has always, from the time they were married, taken on the lion's share of the domestic work at home. He does the cooking. And nobody hears these stories, and they do need to be told. And men need role models like this as well. And, these are the stories where, so men feel that they need to contribute to the domestic burden to actually level the playing field at work.
Reactions?
So, here's the deal. I think what Shyel said is amazing and definitely something warranted to contribute to household work and for men to do that. But generally speaking, I think there's something also beyond that. I don't think it's a quantum of work. I know it's trying for a woman, let's put it at that. Double time work, triple time work, you to be twice the man or thrice the man, whatever the proportion is, to be at the same level as a man who's 1/3 your level. So that, having said that, and having said that, yes, there should be equal contribution. At the same time, I think it is really a question of access and opportunity. And I think that becomes a far more important aspect to this extent. And the discourse. So what Shyel said is right. For example, the high-stake matters. You won't find many women in high-stake matters. You won't find many women even in litigation. Recently, the report that was given to the parliament, 15% women lawyers generally across the country. And that's about 15% lawyer women, not that many practicing. And then you have the leaky pipe, that whole philosophy, that, you'll study. You had 54% women in CLAT this time, as opposed to 46, whatever the balance was of men. But you don't find that same proportion translating it across. Even in our times, I go back to 1980, by the way, roughly. At that time also, I mean, there were women in law schools. It isn't as if they weren't there. Law was not a lucrative profession, that's another matter. It was a last resort, another matter. But having said that, ultimately, women would study law because they had to study something. And it's a good qualification, but catch a woman studying law. A lawyer was not considered a good wife, a good daughter-in-law, a good tenant for that matter also, even a man, frankly. But the point is, this is a broad discourse that is across the subject. So, of course, that transition happened, and that's yesteryears, so we can kind of leave that behind. But you should all be happy to know that today, I mean, lawyers are pretty much right in the front line, so you're in a good sphere and a good space for all standards. But just the thing of the discourse, you just have to have women actually also fighting their own attributes. This qualification. She shouldn't be speaking so much. She's too loud. She's too aggressive. I'm sorry to say, chudi pen ke thodi na baithna hai court mein. You're arguing a matter. I mean, you may as well do it. If somebody likes it, somebody doesn't like it, it's fine. Men are aggressive, not considered. And I'm really not trying this, differentiation. But what I'm saying is, if it's a job which has to be done in the manner in which it has to be done, and also women must consider that it is their target. It is not something that can be left alone and said, "Main ye nahi karungi." So as somebody said in a corporate discussion also across the board, that women should take up issues aggressively. And I'm not arguing an aggressiveness, I'm sorry, don't misconstrue what I'm saying. But I'm saying whatever it takes to meet the targets should be met. And it shouldn't be viewed as a negative by your peers or even by, for example, the judges who are hearing you. And I do know at times that sometimes it can be a matter of concern that, somebody will say, no, she's being too loud. That's not a personal experience, by the way. I've rarely had it, but be that as it may, I'm fortunate. But at the same time, this is the general discourse what comes across. And I find that women very often will say, no, I think this much is enough. No, nothing is enough. Reach for your targets, head towards them, and try to achieve them. And as I said, whatever it needs to contribute, if it means you have to go into the old boys club, well, so be it. Don't only criticize the old boys club, they were always there. You have to work it out. So at the end of it, how do you do it? So meet the targets at that level. And that's what I think is the greatest feature that needs to be done. The stereotyping of a working woman is she's very good. Like once upon a time it used to be a professor is very good. For a woman to be a professor, very nice. Lawyer, question mark. That's another matter. Lawyer, corporate, very good. Litigation, question mark. So these are the kind of discourses and the narratives that need to be converted fully, and you people are converting them. And incidentally, I find it very interesting. There was a time when women, for that matter, were coming a lot more into the corporate field, considering it safer. Safe horizons, you're getting X amount of money, you've got a good package, you've got a good environment to work, you're not kind of trailing the streets of Tisazari, and Saket is much better, but Tisazari is pretty much dismal at some times. I started work from there. No, but it is. No, but it is. It is. Justice Mittal, I mean, you and I have worked there, come on. I have. And I mean, the conditions are quite different, that's all I was meaning. Nothing more, nothing less. A very good course. Judges are very good. No comment on that. The position of justice is not bad, but I'm saying the working environment can be somewhat disconcerting, if not to say the least. I know that, for example, Chief Justice Leela said, in Patna High Court, one of her things was, that ultimately how difficult it was for her to practice because there wasn't a ladies' toilet. Now you may say this is an absurdity, what a small thing, but this was a matter of fact. She said it not once, she said it 1,000 times. I've heard her saying this, And the room was converted actually so that there could be a ladies' toilet and she was one of the first pioneers of this whole, system. You look at it, give her a brief and they'd say, "Tum manage kar logi Leela?" Oh, but why will Leela not manage it? She did manage it, and she went on to become the first Chief Justice of a High Court in this country. And you had similar experiences. I mean, you had one of the most, one of the greatest people who fought a war was a lady called Regina Guha in 1913, who went on to challenge the fact that she wasn't allowed to practice because we used to have an antiquated act which said that women are not allowed to practice. She went and challenged that in the Calcutta High Court. And no, Cornelia also came in, but Regina actually challenged this, and ultimately in 1913, and yeah, Guha. And then she went on and she ultimately had a judgment against her. Ultimately the act was made in 1923, the Legal Practitioners Act, which allowed women to work. So we've come a long way. I mean, you have all the support systems on paper. You have everything to say there's a statute, there's no question of discrimination. We have the Constitution saying no gender discrimination. But when you're talking about the private sector, and law in that sense is a private sector, you have rules and regulations, but nothing which says that, attitudes will, so those attitudes need to be set in, and you do have to convert, but I find that there is a wide change and women are actually raring to go in the litigation field also, which is a much tougher one compared to corporate, in a sense. I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody, but the idea is it's just a tougher horizon and a longer run situation, because you're actually going for it for a number of years before you actually come to a stage where you can profess yourself, whereas generally speaking in a corporate life, there would be something to do with the first instance itself. So I mean, you have these various diverse situations which you are seeing. So you really need to say that I can do what I can do. Just let me have the opportunity to do it, and you also have the will to do it. Because the will should not go down on the ground that, oh, never mind, maybe I wasn't meant to do this. I was always meant to do this. I should have the opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Trehan, for your thoughts on leveling the playing field at home, and that a possible solution could be that men themselves take on a larger role. And Ms. Anand, for your points on essentially saying that setting that attitude, it's a matter of personal will and ambition for the woman. So perhaps the greater battle is on that side. Mr. Pati, my next question to you, ma'am. What are the benefits of having a diverse legal profession? Why are we having this discussion essentially?
I think The first and foremost is that you bring in diverse perspectives. So once you have diversity, you have a greater representation from all segments of the society. In India particularly, the women face discrimination not just for the usual known reasons, but also in the Indian scenario based on caste, religion, and a lot of other factors. In fact, I would say in India, the discrimination begins at home itself. Their first fight really begins at home, where sometimes they have to fight to be able to continue their education, not get married, to be able to work. Even sometimes they're allowed to study, but then they are told, no, but you cannot work outside. If you can work outside, okay, you can work in only within the city, you can't go out of the city, you can't pick up transferable jobs, and so on and so forth. So I think once you bring in diversity, you also bring in new perspectives, which helps to broaden the horizon, the thinking, and which is thought-provoking for the whole society. Also, I would say that permeates down to the whole system, to the policy makers and everybody. And it's only when we are taking steps at the broader level that the changes would really come. At individual levels, yes, but those would be small changes. It's only when the whole society works for it at the various levels that the changes come. So that is where I feel the changes can really be brought in by having the diversity.
Also add on the barriers.
The barriers. Okay. So for me, I think the first and foremost barrier, as I said, begins at home. So first of all, your home environment. Does it permit you to work outside, study outside? Once it permits you to work outside, is there a support system at home? Now, that itself is a very big challenge for the Indian women. Not just for the Indian women, I would say anybody with special requirements. Your second is when you're working, the infrastructure, as we spoke about Tisazari just now. I remember going to Tisazari for the first time, looking for a toilet for the ladies. Believe me, I couldn't find one. So I hunted for the house, nearest house of a friend who was living there and went there. But really, I mean, no, it has, but I'm talking of quite some time back, yes.
In 1981, you could not probably find them.
That's what I said, I couldn't find one. Later, of course, I was told by a few friends where to find one, but they are not easily found. They were not easily found that time at least. So the infrastructure, the facilities, the utilities, for instance, young mothers. Now we have a creche now in the High Court. I don't know if that facility, as Gita ma'am rightly said, one has to be looking not just at Delhi. We end up looking only at Delhi most of the time. But if I would be looking across the country, those facilities may not be available to the women across. I remember going to Allahabad High Court a number of times, and I find much less number of practicing lady lawyers than I find in Delhi. So there must be a reason for it. Either the families will not permit them to work, or if they do not find the infrastructure sufficient to support their needs and requirements. Now, we also spoke about technology. Yes, technology has provided a great support, not just in terms of being able to do online hearings, also online conferences, both with the clients and with the briefing lawyers. So even if the hearing is happening physical, at least the briefing counsels, fortunately for them, don't have to travel all the way to the senior's office, which can sometimes mean saving as much as 1.5 hours just one way. So having an online conference, online filing, all these things have been a big help. Recently, I remember, I think Justice Lalit, when he said that some young lady lawyers, if they have a problem, they can mention in my court, and I can give them a fixed time for their matter, because they may find it difficult to hang around in the courts for the full time. So I think doing these small bits can be a big help. Now, talking of barriers, I think also I would bringing in education, bringing in sensitivity to certain things, and as rightly said, it's not just about the women, it's also about the men. When somebody has to get something, somebody else has to forego something. So unless they are participating as much as the expectation is on this side, it may be very difficult. And of course, the hidden problem of harassment at work. I think that is something which is being, or at least the forms, the institutions are addressing by having a committee. There is a redressal system which has been made. But the problem remains. It is a fact that very often there is an effort to just put it under the carpet. So harassment at work is another problem which really needs to be addressed even better.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your thoughts. My next question to Justice Mittal. Ma'am, is the bench even alive to the issues of diversity and inclusion at the bench itself? And are there any learnings from perhaps the solutions derived from the private sectors that Mr. Pathi was talking about being applied to the challenges faced by the bench on these issues?
Thank you, Mosam. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to be part of this lovely panel. It's so good to be back, sitting with my dear friends from the bar. I was almost 20 years away after 23 years of practice, but I'm looking at the clock in front of me, which is timing me, and I was told I'll have 4 minutes, So I'll keep my eye on the watch. But first, let me tell you a story about what Neelima ended with, harassment. It's like you may have heard of a comment, it came in the papers also, I think, that a judge commented to a lady lawyer, your hairstyle is better than your arguments, something like that. I know another judge who made this comment when a request for an adjournment was made because the lady was at the final stages of a confinement and the doctor told her no driving. So she sent a colleague to request for a only 10-day adjournment because she was expected to deliver a baby any day. And the judge tells that lawyer who requested the adjournment, doesn't your friend know there's nothing like maternity leave in the profession? So when you talk of barriers, the first barrier is the attitude to women, And certainly the legal profession seems to be cognizant of it. We are talking of flexi hours, we are talking of an enabling environment, we are talking of a creche, and we are talking of, well, I put in childcare rooms also in Kashmir. And as there's diversity on the bench, it increases and women reach senior leadership positions on the bench and in the bar. But it certainly, things will look even more better, and I am a big optimist, and I'm sure there's a huge opportunity for lawyers in every area of law, be it corporate, be it litigation. And salaries are looking better. We are talking of equality in salaries. In the judiciary, there was no problem. But lady lawyers, when I talk of the 80s, it was extremely difficult to get the same salary as a male lawyer would be paid. The expectation from what you would expect, the kind of case that a woman would be expected to argue. She would be very good to do custody matters, matrimonial cases. But as Shyel pointed out, that even in the US, a high-profile financial dispute will invariably or will mostly be expected to be argued by a male lawyer, and that's what the percentage shows. From the bench, I'll relate a story to you, which was a very telling experience as to why diversity is important. But before I tell you the story, let me just tell you that, we have, without realizing it, revolved the whole conversation and divided it into a binary between men and women. When you're talking of inclusion, inclusion is beyond gender and sex. It includes religious minorities, it includes the people from the other genders, the third gender, it includes caste structures. We haven't even begun the conversation around those. So when we talk of inclusion, we have to include every segment of society, including the categories I pointed out. And this binary is something which is not peculiar to us. If you look at the Constitution of India, it talks of sex you know, Article 15, Article 16, but there is no mention of gender anywhere in the Constitution, and there is no legislation which talks of gender other than the transgender enactment, which is a recent outcome, that too because of the intervention of the Supreme Court of India. Now coming back to the story which I heard on the bench, I'm fast running out of time and I always have a lot to say. So, you know, many of you must have heard of Chief Justice Beverly McLachlan. She was the longest Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada. And she related this story. You know, she talks of when she was a younger judge, not in the Supreme Court level then, and she says she went into the courtroom and the first case was called in and the defendant came in, a male defendant. He entered the room and he balked at the door. And by the time he reached the dais, he was visibly shaking. So she was constrained to ask him what made him so nervous and scared. And his reaction, he was almost in tears. Your Honor, I'm completely overwhelmed. So she said, why are you feeling that? He said, look around you. He said, you're a woman, the prosecutor is a woman, your court staff is women, and there's not a single other man except me in this room. Now you imagine how a woman litigant feels when she enters all our courtrooms which are full of only men. And you know, I'm doing a lot of work these days in sexual violence. I'm not talking of how those women feel. But this was Beverly McLachlan. Then let me repeat a statement made by Chief Justice Brenda Hale. This was at an event of women judges. Brenda Hale rose to be, she was a law lord when I met her, and then she became the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of United Kingdom, retired only last year. And Brenda said this to all the women judges. She was addressing a conference where there were 2,000 women judges, and she said, before you vacate your position, they were all women judges, make sure that you fill up the position with a woman, because if you leave the choice to them, they will never appoint a woman in your place. You will never be replaced by a woman. Now, when we talk of figures, and I'll give you figures in a moment, when you talk of figures, please look at this, that women have hardly ever reached decision-making leadership positions in this country. If you look at the Supreme Court, there have been 15 women judges. There has only ever been one woman who reached the collegium. That was Justice Ruma Pal. All the other women have been appointed when they were at the verge of retirement in the High Court at 62, or after they had retired. That was the first woman judge, Justice Fatima Bibi. So they retire as the junior judge on the bench, never even making it to positions as a senior judge on a bench, and never reach decision-making positions. So this is where the fault lies. If you look at appointments to the subordinate, I don't like using the word subordinate, but the trial courts, the civil judge, the munsif, where the recruitment is by examination, almost 40 to 50% women are qualifying. You look at the trial courts, you will have almost between a 40 to 50% judge entry level. Why does this position change when we reach the constitutional courts of high courts and the Supreme Courts? Even today, there are so many high courts which have never had a woman judge. And we are talking of inclusion here. You know, so the reason is this, that, you know, women have to reach leadership positions, and it's not only a matter of making yourself, it is also not only a matter of ensuring an enabling environment. A lot is to do with opportunity. You know, we have to change mindsets, and everybody, every single man, every single woman has to realize that women are as competent, if not more, as qualified, as experienced as the next man in the room. Not only women or from the other marginalized communities. Now, what is happening? You know, Pinky said that, spoke about figures, you know, about the lawyers entering. This is data from the All India survey in higher education, which was related, figures were related in the parliament. LLB students, 33% are women, girls. This is the figures from 2019 to 20. The government, in a reply to a question, informed data from 24 state bar councils, only 15.33% women. High Court strength, sorry, 1029 is the total sanctioned judge strength. The judge population ratio, 21 judge per million people. It's so bad in India. High courts, 1 judge per 2 million people. Out of these, how many women judges? In the trial courts, 30% women judges. In the high courts, only 11.5%. And in the Supreme Court, even less. So what do you see? When we are talking of inclusion, where women is concerned, it is tokenism and stemming from stereotyping, bias in the appointments. So far as other categories are concerned, the third gender, no representation at any level. You know, you could talk of the people from the LGBT community. You know, LG, no difficulty, but transgenders, you know, despite Supreme Court talking about their rights, we still as a society treat them as if they have no rights. They are invisible. In my conversations with transgenders, I've told that, you know, in the northern India, they get stuff like what is called badhai, you know, son is born, a daughter is born. In the rest of the country, there is nothing except sexual violence or sex trade for them. So they beg. You know, but why can't they go to school? Till today, till the judgment of the Supreme Court, we didn't even have a column on the form. Do the application forms for appointment of judges to the judiciary include the third gender? You know, so these are the various steps that we must take. So, you know, where women are concerned, why do you need women? 50% of the world's population is women. You know, and when we are talking of a man feeling overwhelmed, and as I pointed out, how do women feel when they enter the court? So, bigger representation of women judges on the bench ensures a more comfortable environment for 50% of the population. It shows equality in judicial appointments, equality in the system. It ensures a sensitivity, it shows a realization that women bring the wealth of their experience to the bench. Women can multitask is biologically accepted. You know, but then the exclusion is not only here, the barrier is not only with the appointment. Then comes the roster distributions. Then comes committees to which you are appointed. Justice Ruma Paul always related this story. I think I'm way over time now. I'll stop after this story. I think it was the Whirlpool matter which was being argued. It was a trademark dispute. And she was sitting on a bench by a very, very forward, outward-looking judge from the Delhi High Court. Later he became the Chief Justice of India, Justice B.N. Kirpal. And there was some discussion about a washing machine. And the male judge promptly said, oh, I know nothing about washing machines, but my sister will tell you all about them. And Justice Ruma Pal, being the woman she was, promptly said, why the hell should I know all about washing machines, you know? And the bench was stunned, you know, the bench partner was stunned. And it took a minute for it to sink into the lawyers also as to what was the conversation happening. So when you get committees, you know, court committees, what do the women judges get? They get protocol duties. They get choice of liveries, that is uniforms for the staff. They will look at the family courts, look at the creche facilities, but development of the IT, digitization, you know, case management, that goes, all these plum appointments, ADR, sometimes women will get ADR, mediation, not arbitration. Today things are maybe a little different, but this is the kind of stereotyping which permeates on the bench as well. Even in, even in the roster allocations, the bench partners. So we have to overcome all this to ensure equality and realize that a woman brings as much worth to the bench, probably more than a man does. So this is some of my thoughts on the need and why there should be inclusion. And the biggest difficulty in ensuring inclusion in the constitutional courts, where there is no, I pointed out, selection committees who are selecting, you know, and the bias there. I still remember a conversation, 8 names had gone for appointment to the Delhi High Court. And there was a lot of banter going on with one of the collegium judges as to who was good, why did you send so, why didn't you send so. I kept listening, and at the end of it, I always found it as does Pinky too. We react, So, and that's what she said, aggression, strength. Nilima here is another one. Shyel is gentle and kind to the bench. Nilima is too, but Pinky and I have come up at a time when there were hardly any women. I joined the bar, Pinky is a year senior, but she had gone to Oxford. I was joined in 81. There were only 2 senior advocates, Shamila Papu and Urmila Kapoor. There were 3 about 40-year-olds in the High Court, and the rest were in the 20s, and we were newcomers to the bar. And at that time, you really had to struggle to be taken seriously. I was told when I joined the bar, there are 2 things you can do. One is work, sit in your chamber and your office, work, read your files. The second is sit in the canteen and have tea with your chamber, both with your senior. Both ways, you will make the same amount of money. So this was how women were looked at, a status symbol where women could go around, with the male seniors, and adjournments could be taken by them. But neither Pinky nor I fell in that mold, and we've had to fight our way. So we come back from a different wealth of experience. But what I started to tell you about was, what was I telling you? And I got distracted. Sorry? Okay. No, I just want to finish. The way forward was I was saying, yes, objectivity in selections. So it's not only about the selection committee. There are no objective selection criteria for appointment to the constitutional courts. There is no assessment of the work you have done. There is no assessment of judgments you have written. No comparison between male and female judges, who's done more work, what kind of work, whether they've made a difference, etc. So what you need is objective selection criteria, objective and transparent selection processes, similar to probably what the trial courts have. And that is the only way that you will be able to get the representation and the inclusion which is needed. Sorry, Mozam.
Thank you so much, ma'am. In fact, I do have a follow-up question to you on this, but I'll come to you in a bit. That's as a penalty for running over time. My next question to you, ma'am, Ms. Anand, and this flows from some of the things that Justice Mittal was saying. In the outlook of lawyers of yesteryears versus lawyers of today, and you all following in the latter part, which is lawyers of today, how do you think this outlook has changed?
See, for starters, the profession itself has changed. I mean, as I said, what was looked yesterday as the last resort is looked at the first resort. That is evident from everybody's discussions, from the manner in which people are going in for studies as much as for the profession itself. I think the second element that has really changed the discourse has been globalization. I think that changed the whole character on the surface. Of course, some of you are even after the globalization, so maybe you don't know that was one of the turning points, but it was. Because you ultimately had more work. Law is based on economics. And if economics prospers, law prospers. It's not the best of statements, but nonetheless, it works. So, I mean, it has changed the complete surface around to have provided, for example, the corporate field. Your mergers, you have acquisitions, you have so many more engagements and shareholders. And now, of course, you have insolvency and God knows bankruptcies, which we never knew about once upon a time. So really, you have come into a different era where you are engaging in this. You have far more contracts, tenders, engagements. So anyway, all of you understand that larger surface that has come today to boot. But I mean, between yesterday's profession and today's profession, as I said, the first change is a change in law. The second change is in the sense of numbers. And incidentally, I didn't mean when I said that don't look at numbers alone is what I was saying. So I mean, it depends. If you use them when you want to demonstrate something, but I'm saying numbers sometimes don't signify positions, the power positions, or the positions in place. So I mean, women really were not heard of in those days. Very few women. Frankly, I mean, between Justice Mittal and myself and people like us, we didn't have much of a hard time also. We just did what we wanted to do and what we thought we should do and engage into a case and argue it. and if anybody stopped us, we bullied them aside. That was about it. So, I mean, in a way, it was simple. And frankly, I often look behind and say, but people ask me, were you discriminated against? I said, mujhe nahi yaad. Nobody discriminated against me. But at the same time, what did change was the value systems. See, as women go, frankly, when I started law, I for a couple of years, I didn't even bother. You didn't get engaged in everything that goes along with it. You did the work, usme koi kami nahi thi. But at the same time, you didn't do everything that took it to get far, to get further ahead. So that kind of situation one didn't do. But today's is a very competitive world. Highly competitive because of the numbers, the larger numbers, and because the pie has become larger, but the eaters have become even larger. So the beneficiaries, if you like. So it really is that. And today you find that, by the way, just this year, from January onwards, we've had every arbitration center in the world visit India, which includes SIAC, which includes ICC, which includes, of course, we had the Delhi arbitration weekend also. And it's a constantly going progress. So India's actually looked as a market. As much for lawyering as much for anything else. So that also indicates to you the kind of power position that we have come to today, because now the world is available, so you can have the venue somewhere and the seat somewhere. It's very convenient. Of course, there's a question mark on the justice delivery system and interventions of courts, but that's white in case for you, wherever that comes in. But the changeover is really, it's evident in the confidence. I find that the youngsters are confident. They want to go far. They want to do whatever it takes to make it work. They're not shy. There's so many first generations. I thought I was one of the few first generations in my time, by the way. So I was very proud of myself as first generation, nobody there in the family. But today all my colleagues, Saudamini, Aziz, they're all first timers who are here, and they've taken it. Muslim too. Okay, good for him. So I mean, first timers, and there are more first timers literally than the generational ones. But there's one law in every family. Man, woman, I can't say third gender right now, but subject to some time that will also happen. However, that is the changeover in what time is given, because the profession itself has become far more answerable. And that's incidentally another thing I think. We must make ourselves more answerable as lawyers. Time has gone when lawyers were not responsible for what they did, and they said, "Mera clerk chutti pe chala gaya tha, and my munshi went somewhere in village mein, etc." ho gaya tha. That time has changed. The e-filings and this digitalization will bring in far more responsibility that we need to carry on our own. Rest, I mean, one learns down the streets. You learn down the roads of the Tisari. I love the chart there, and the dhaba at the back is also very nice. You guys must try it whenever you have a chance. There are scandal points, and there are other points where you must learn to go. The samosa ka chutney in Tisari is very nice. So I have a chamber there, by the way. So it's not that, but of course for the time being it's locked. So whoever wants to come in, bata dena. We can kind of utilize that. The other thing that I want to just flag for a moment is that we must pay more attention to the trial courts. I think all of us want to jump to the Supreme Court. And that's something which personally I have a lot of reservations on. I think we should learn what the history of law is and the history of litigation is, which you can only learn at the first levels. And that carries you forever. So for example, what I learned in one of the cases, trial cases in the beginning, has stood me in decent stead according to me. Others may vary, for the next so many decades down the line. So, I mean, these transitions are there. Women are definitely having a very important role. You're finding women in partnerships, you're finding people on the law firms. I noticed Khaitan was here, Ajay Bhargav was here. How many women partners are there? He just stepped out, maybe. So anyway, you're having a lot of women in partner positions, lesser than required, obviously. However, they are there. You are finding, for example, on the other surface, not only lawyers, companies. Post the 2014 amendment, the Companies Amendment, you're actually finding a phenomenal rise. So we came to about 37% board representation in women, talking about numbers. And I find that's worked very well. So what we really need to do for development further is don't have, one of the things Justice Mittal said, very true, amongst government panels, and since I was ASG also, so I was basically looking at it, women would be given panel C. That's all right, briefing is okay for them, they just have to draft a pleading, and then of course the adjournments. So the whole attitudinal change that is there is coming from all of you, and it is actually translating. And I do believe that you are as good as you make yourself out to be. So if you force the issue, at some points there will be resistance, but at some point it will be good, because even the judges, nobody will really oppose it on that ground of whatever it might be. You had something else also, Wisdom, on that? Or you're done? Okay, great.
Thank you so much. Just a quick question. Are we happy to go on? No, sorry. No question answers yet. I'm just asking a question to him whether we're okay to go on, right? Fantastic. Huh? 10 minutes. You can extend it. Let's see. A quick reaction on what Miss Anand said to Miss Puri and Miss Trehan. Whoever amongst you wants to go first. Yeah.
So I think I'm younger than them, so we had a easier road paved thanks to people like Justice Mittal and Miss Anand, who did some of the very hard work. Today, I feel like the Delhi High Court is a model court on many things. Inclusivity also for people coming from outside of Delhi, first-generation lawyers. It's a meritocracy in many, many ways. And it's changed even in the last 23 years that I've been practicing. When I was pregnant with my first child, I think people looked at me as a curiosity. I worked till the day I went into labor. And this was very shocking to people. Today, I see lots of young lawyers working till the last day, having their kids, coming back very quickly, and even having I remember one of my colleagues saying to a judge at 4:30 that I can't stay beyond 4:30, I have to go home to feed my baby. And the senior counsel, who I'm very fond of on the other side, male senior counsel, said that is the most ridiculous excuse I have ever heard in my entire life. Why can't somebody else feed the baby? And she looked at him and she said, I am breastfeeding. And he said, that's still ridiculous. So, it was something that, which is why I say bring the men in to the conversation. And on the flip side, there was another very funny incident in court once. Senior lawyer on the other side, now he's a senior counsel, his briefing counsel said, Counsel had a baby yesterday, so cannot come today. We're asking for an adjournment. The judge looked at him point blank and said, isn't counsel a man? And he said, yes, he is a man, but he's in the hospital with his wife and newborn child. So, but that was the reaction, that why can't he be here? So I think we have to cut slack on both sides. We have to support the women more, and we have to support the men more in having roles that are not just because this whole conversation was that, and that's why today I feel women are in a better position. They demand more of their partners. They demand more. They have more confidence to tell the bench that they have certain things. And the bench is definitely more sensitive than it was 10, 15 years ago. I have to say that. I can see that. And I think that change is coming through conversations like this.
See, I feel that what needs to be done is that the narrative has to change. Nobody is doubting that women lawyers are not capable enough. The problem that is happening is mostly with clients. They feel that women are not being able to give 24/7. They feel that if it is a male advocate, then you can call him up at any time and he's available for you all the time. But they do not understand that that is not true now. People, if they are ambitious, they want to work. We are working mostly because we want to work. So we are willing to. But that is what they feel. They feel that the priority as far as women are concerned will always be not their work, but their family. They don't understand that that priority is there for the men also. It is just assumed. The assumptions have to change, I feel.
Thank you so much. Coming back to you, Justice Mittal. Now, this is stepping away from just gender diversity and inclusiveness for a bit. Homosexuality was decriminalized, I believe, 5 years ago, 2018. Has anything changed?
I was the acting Chief Justice of Delhi. And as heading the then collegium, I was able to persuade my learned brothers on the collegium with me. And we sent the name of the first ever openly declared homosexual for appointment as a judge of the High Court. That name was approved by the Supreme Court Collegium, and it has gone back and forth between the Supreme Court Collegium and the government. So that is the status of 377 and homosexuals in India and the perception. We have had some of the greatest judges who have been openly declared gay. Justice Michael Kirby of Australia, I think Justice Cameron also of South Africa, and this is something, this gender neutrality on the bench and its inclusion is an essential part of being inclusive to having a representative judiciary. We are yet to take the baby step on the first baby step on this, and I think it will be a great day for all of us when we show the world how inclusive we are. It is I had a petitioner before me in Jammu and Kashmir who was a victim of acid violence, and they are the most marginalized of the marginalized women, who suffer so much. We don't even realize how much suffering there is for victims of that. She was a law student when she was attacked with a second-year law student when she was attacked with acid and suffered such disfigurement, for which she was traveling from Srinagar to Chennai to get treatment. And I had encouraged her while she was still in court to finish her law degree. And she said, nobody will give me a job. So I was in need of a law researcher, and she applied, and I was able to offer her that employment as a law researcher with me. In Delhi High Court, we had recruited 6 acid violence victims on contract, and I put them in visible places, and even a transgender, in a visible place. There's a transgender who mans the wheelchair service of the Delhi High Court. She's still there in place. She came to meet me after I retired, and I came back. So these are areas that we have looked at. We see people are seeing that they perform, and they do the same things as well, if not better than what the way we do, the rest of us do. And it is very, very important that we change our attitudes and the biases and the stereotyping in our minds and ensure a more inclusive community and society, especially by their representation on the bench and the bar as well. I haven't seen this representation and this inclusion in the bar even, I haven't seen any transgenders or anybody having the courage to say that they belong to the LGBTQI community. They do so in countries close by. You go to Philippines, you go to Thailand, and those countries accept the third gender, but we are still struggling with these issues.
Perhaps they are still waiting for an elevation to come to the bench, to be brave enough to be, to come out in the open. My last question, and I'll start this discussion with you, Ms. Anand, and perhaps then whoever else in the panel wants to come in on this. Meritocracy and diversity. Is one necessarily against the other? Is it a versus scenario? Is one at the odds with the other, or is there some other explanation to this?
Very briefly, I think there's a time element to this discussion. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. At the initial stages, it could be. Because when you, for example, are doing, let's say, reservation, and you have used as a reservation as a tool across for, let's say, company representation as per the Companies Act amendment for women directors on boards. So you might have that because you have to appoint a woman. It doesn't matter whether she's as meritorious as another. So you'll appoint that woman. But what we have, for example, found with the 73rd and 74th Panchayat Raj amendment in 1992. Initially, it was always somebody will be a wife, somebody will be a daughter, somebody will be a mother who will actually stand for the sarpanch or stand for the elections. But ultimately, it gets translated. So therefore, for the process is such that you have to make up for lost time, and that lost time has to be made up in a kind of aggressive manner. So reservation has been, for example, used as a tool to eliminate the time factor and to fast track the whole process. So I'm afraid for some time it can be, but at the end of the day, diversity and meritocracy run together, because the object, in fact, this is what Chief Justice Chandrachud said at Harvard when he was receiving one of the awards, that don't think they are actually antithetical to each other. They do ultimately come around, because the idea is you provide the tool for somebody to escalate. Once they escalate, they come to the same position, and once they come to the same position, you achieve ultimately the same meritocracy standards. In any case, incidentally, between you and me, there is still so much discretion. It is not as if meritocracy only reigns the field. So let's not go there also. There are some errors and some lacunas in every system, and particularly in our system. So we do have to ensure that there is this issue of identity being able to face. And I would at that time actually second what Justice Mittal has said. I don't want to say much more than that, but to say this much, that there are identities. These are some things which are not come out of a disease. It's not a position which is something to be thrown out or outcast. You have to bring them within the system. When you have to bring people within the system, you do have to give them a step up. That step up ladder is necessary. It's like, in games initially, you people may not know the physical games, but once upon a time, if you were junior or little frail, you'd be given a little step up and say, ki tum do rang se aage se bhag lo. I mean, these are the same things. So there is that small element, small time factor, but it catches up because that's what time has demonstrated. And just one other feature I want to outline, I don't believe in this 50-50. There's no 50-50. There may be 75-25, there may be 30-70. Whatever it takes, you just get your due. If you want to do lesser, you do lesser. You don't have to do what you're compelled to do. But if you want to do that, you have to have the opportunity to get there so that you do your full potential and you add to what is known as the economic welfare, the economic asset, and the social asset of the world.
Thank you. Considering we're running out of time, or perhaps already have, maybe one question from the audience.
So 1 or 2 years down the line, when she is able to bring up the boy or whatsoever, bring up the child, so after the 2 years, she will never get that kind of salary or that kind of pay package that she was getting 2 years ago when she was a mother. She was not a mother. So my point is, for that 2 years, the almost 30% workforce that we are talking about, that is completely out of the work regime. So they are not contributing to the economy. The economy is going down for that particular time. And after 2 years, they are forced to join at a very meager amount or a very meager salary. So they have to compromise everywhere. So this is where we should also talk about diversity. And so when we talk about work from home opportunities,
maybe so Shyel, you can react.
So I think there are two parts of this. One is, and this is a very, it's a discussion worldwide now on the unpaid labor that is done at home. So the person who's staying home to raise the children, male or female, that person is contributing to the economy, but in a different way. You need the next generation to be raised, but who's raising them? Now, which is why today almost every primary parent, if you walk into a school, if you ask a child who is your primary parent, mostly it's the mother. Even if the mother is working. And it's true of my household too. I'm working full time, I work as hard as my male counterparts, but I am also the primary parent to my children, even though my husband tries very, very hard to support me in my career. So that is something which I think that unpaid, where you say it doesn't contribute to the economy, it does, but it's not recognized, which is a problem. And the second is the support systems, right, which is again, like Justice Mittal was saying, creches, how to enable, and I always say this, in the first few years of motherhood, to stay in the system, you need the system to support you. And then you can contribute to the system. But those are 1 or 2 years where you are vulnerable, and if you stay in, you can run the marathon. But in those 2 years, you're not running the race the same as everyone else.
That is where the work from home opportunity can come in. And at least for 2 years, compulsory work from home should be provided to female.
I don't think it should be compulsory. In fact, that is by itself, it's optional. And to be honest, while it's very enabling to have work from home options, I think the work from home needs to be gender neutral. Because if women are working from home and men are in the workplace, the person in the workplace has an immediate advantage. You even see a hearing where one lawyer is there physically and another person is online. The person who's there physically with the judge in front of them physically certainly has a huge advantage over the person who's on the computer screen.
You know, if you're talking of the legal profession and being able to work online, perhaps that can be partly a solution. But not all professions give you an opportunity to be able to work online, first of all. Secondly, we find in some of the countries the maternity leave is as long as about 16 months. And that can be alternated between both parents, the husband and the wife. So, as we said, as I said before, and I think my panelists agree with me, that if the male counterparts would come forth to share the responsibility, things don't change overnight. But if they will make an effort, so even if it is not 50-50, but there is some contribution for a few months, then perhaps the change can come about.
You get childcare leave in India also. Yes. You men also get childcare leave. Yeah. And you get childcare leave up to 2 years in India for women. And there's a similar period for men also in a lot of services. I'm talking of judges who are in service, not lawyers. That's what, lawyers don't have any service rules. Yeah.
And then also, it is not that women are leaving only when they have, when there is when they give birth. These days, according to a recent survey, a lot of women lawyers leave their profession in their 40s. That is because that is when your parents and your in-laws need help. So again, the primary caregiver is the woman. So that is where the problem lies, that if there is no family support, if there is no support from, I would say, no mentorship, there is no support, then you have no choice. Somebody has to leave. And the first thing is the woman should leave the job. That is, I think that is where, again, I will say the narrative has to change.
Thank you. Okay, so the last sentence, considering I'm the moderator, I will have my last word in. Nobody can stop me. Okay, I'll just read out a line that my colleagues in my chamber have pulled out for me. And I'll wait, let me just read it out first. The legal profession in India is one that is steeped in history and tradition, but in order to move forward towards a more diverse and inclusive future, it is important to break down the barriers that have historically excluded certain groups. Any idea whose quote this is? Who said this? No? Oh, you know it. This is from ChatGPT. Okay? So a machine has understood it. It's time we humans do as well. Right? So with that, thank you so much, panelists. It was very engaging, very illuminating. Thank you.